Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton. Shane Brophy is ever head of sport in the Media Guardian, and we're joined by Whelan to preview all things this weekend. And I suppose, Shane, we'll just start off with yourself. We don't have too much to cheer about in Tipperary just at the moment, but we do have a camogie team facing into an All-Ireland quarter-final, so it's important everyone gets behind them, especially as a precursor to Galway against Limerick, so it'll be a big occasion.
Yeah, we were just saying when I was just saying to somebody when the draw was made last Saturday evening in Whelan Park that, it would ideally Tip would love to have got to a semi, but now they're playing Antrim in a quarter, and God, wouldn't it have been great if Tip were in a quarter final against Antrim and then the senior hurlers playing Limerick. It would have been a great double for the weekend, but it isn't to be. But look, this camogie team have done very, very well so far. Like, they've really found another level this year under Dennis Kelly, particularly in the championship. I suppose in the league too. Like, I think the only game they lost in the league was against Kilkenny, and that cost them a place in the league final. But through the championship, they've been very impressive, unbeaten in Munster, and the group stages held Kilkenny to a draw in Whelan Park last weekend. Probably a game that they probably should have won. But look, I don't think the extra game, provided they win it on Saturday, will do them any harm. Potentially going into a semi-final, and look, you're looking at one of Kilkenny and Cork going out this weekend will be knocked out. So, it's really there for any of the last six to win it at this stage. And I'm not saying that Tip will definitely win an All-Ireland Senior Camogie Championship this year, but I do think it's their best chance for a long number of years.
Okay, well, Killian, you were commentating on Tipperary against Kilkenny the other day, and we'll come to the Antrim quarter-final soon enough. But just, can you give us the review of that game, and for Tipperary, how important it was to not come away with another narrow 1 or 2 point defeat against one of the big guns?
Yeah, well, I think, good morning to you, lads. The scenario would be that there was a moment of exhilaration actually on the Tipperary sideline. I was high up in the old stand in the gantry, the TV gantry there, and you could see down below us that the girls were visibly, pumped by the fact that I suppose they hadn't lost, that they'd come to Whelan Park and hadn't lost. I know that obviously Dennis Kelly, they would have been preferable if they had got the victory, because it really would have put down a marker. But, I think I was very impressed by Tip and the solidity that they showed on occasion, because, I think, as Shane alluded to there already, in the last couple of years, Kilkenny have denied Tipperary now twice an opportunity of being in the league final, and that has to rankle that little bit with those girls, and an awful lot of them involved in both setups at the time. And you probably would be questioning yourself then a little bit: are we ever going to be able to get over this Kilkenny side? If there's to be a negative on it, I think Tip were in control for a vast part of that game, and didn't get the victory. That might be something that might be, the management might look at it and so forth. But you'd have to say, Shane, it was a massive, I don't want to say moral victory, but I just think for that group, it may have been, it felt like a win in the sense that they weren't defeated in Whelan Park. And, I know Shane there mentioned as well about that, it would have been an idea maybe to get in a semi-final, being as they were obviously as group winners. But look, I don't think a game in Croke Park is going to do Tipperary any harm. And if you look at it now, Shane, the way it's built up, they've a quarter-final against Antrim in Croke Park. They're back to Whelan Park then if they win that game against Antrim for the semi-finals, and then obviously the final in Croke Park. So, this might just be falling for Tipperary a right way, because, they'll have plenty of experience now of the two venues, let's say, in the coming weeks, if it all falls into place for them, and that could be important.
Yeah, and just again, the game at the weekend, Dennis Kelly was talking afterwards about losing Cueva Burke in the first half, goalkeeper, obviously that's important, and bringing on Mairead Eviston, who had a very good performance on Denise Gall, who'd been causing a bit of panic back there for Tipperary. So that was all important stuff, Killian.
Yeah, absolutely, and like you wonder if Cueva had stayed in, and that's no reflection on Anya Slattery. Anya came in and did the needful as well. She in after 20 minutes. I think Cueva picked up a serious enough knock. It would seem. I believe she's twisted her knee, so that obviously puts her in a situation of doubt of availability. I would imagine for the coming weeks. So I wish her well in recovery and hope she's able to get back. But Dennis then made a decision as well. Like how many would lose your goalkeeper and your full back in the space of 90 seconds and then be able to get over the line with some element of a result. And great credit to them that they did. But Mairead Eviston came in and she had a storming game. Denise Gall was causing all sorts of problems inside. And, Claudia Quirk is a fine player in her own right, but she just had an off day. It just wasn't at that moment. But I don't think it was all Claudia's fault either. I think there was an awful lot of space being found in that full back line. But I saw it happen with Kilkenny. I've seen Kilkenny in a couple of games now, Shane, and that's just the exploitation move that they're using, that they're getting that space for Gall. And then Katie Nolan, they've been working in tandem throughout this championship so far. They just seem to be able to find each other on the field no matter what part that they're in. And, they were making hay a little bit with that. But credit, the management team made a decision, whipped off Claudia, brought in Mairead, and, Denise Gall wasn't as effective then from there on in it. She had a goal and 3 points by the 12th minute. Her next 2 points she didn't score till the 49th and 62nd minute. So, look, Gall is of a talent, and I think she's having a fine year again this year. You just can't take your eyes off her. It could be the 70th minute, and you'd still obviously have to keep an eye on her. But I was very impressed by Mairead Eviston. But great credit to Tip and the character that they showed to be able to withstand losing your goalkeeper and your full back after 21 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's something I think it's great credit to the management for that, particularly the Claudia Quirk call, because other managements would decide, okay, she's our vice captain, we won't take her off, we'll move her to somewhere else, we'll take off somebody else to bring in Mairead Eviston, but they didn't. They decided, look, nobody else is struggling, Claudia's struggling, we trust our panel. Mairead Eviston came on and she was brilliant. She played Denise Gall from the front. It was a risky strategy, but it worked. She really got tight with her. And when the ball was coming along, she got in ahead of her. And they made another tactical switch before halftime with Claudia McIntyre coming in. I suppose Liam Tracy's a bit unlucky because the ball wasn't getting into the full forward line. But the management realised that they needed probably more legs around the half forward line, middle of the field, and Claudia McIntyre was going to bring that. And to have 3 subs used by half time, 2 of them tactical, that's strong management. That's realizing, look, we can't wait, we got to do something. And from the moment Mairead came in, I think from there to the 47 minutes, Kilkenny were held scoreless. And I think Tip scored 7 points without reply. But that was the period that probably Tip should have. They didn't kick on enough. 7 points to 0 in that 27 period. Well, probably it wasn't a fair reflection. They had a few wides. Claudia McIntyre, that brilliant goal chance early in the second half. If that had gone in, I think Tip would have pushed on to win. But look, I think I'd agree with Killian. It was a draw for Tip that felt like a win. People might think it's a moral. You're taking moral things out of it. It's like when you're building somewhere, you need to take any bit of comfort or positivity that comes. Tip will have left Nolan Park, I think, in a good space. I think they'll be. I don't think they'll take Antrim for granted at all. And Tip could be a little vulnerable this week. That took an awful lot of effort last weekend. They were spent afterwards. And look, it's hard to know. Maybe did Antrim Antrim got a bad beating off Waterford last weekend. One wonders, did they put everything into that they already knew they were going to be probably in a quarter final. So. But no, I do think it's definitely, while it was a draw, it was definitely a good draw for Tipperary. I suppose provided it works in their favour going forward.
Yeah, well, I just think as well on that, lads. Kilkenny. They've been, an itch to Tipperary. Probably camogie have had to scratch and whatever about the hurlers over the years, but definitely in recent times with the camogie. And I just think that's something that Dennis is obviously going to take, that they were in control in Nolan Park. the only negative that I would suggest, like Kilkenny scored 4 points in the second half, and Tipperary had plenty of the ball, plenty of chances, and probably didn't take them. But the effort, as you said, Shane, that went in, I think the conditions in Nolan Park as well might be a factor. It wasn't easy. There was a bit of a swirling breeze, especially around the city end, and that's where Emer McGrath was hitting in a lot of ball in the second half. So that might be a factor. But I don't want to find excuses either. Look, at the end of the day, they're into an All-Ireland quarter final, and I don't think Dennis will be too perturbed having an extra game in ways, because I think it might afford them an opportunity, as I said, to get a taste, especially with bigger fish probably to fry. No disrespect, Antrim.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that game in a minute. But Killian, just to ask you, broadly speaking, the All Ireland Camogie Championship this year, how good has it been, and who are the teams that have really impressed you?
Well, I think again, quality-wise, I think we've seen games, being thereabouts. Again, what has been great to see is the emergence of someone to take on the big three, as there was a suggestion. There was some people trying to allude probably a couple of years ago that there was four, that Tip had probably joined that, and then I suppose it didn't really go for them last year. So lots of people say, no, we're sticking with the big three. But if you're looking at things now, Galway are probably the only ones that are standing the head and shoulders above everybody else with the way they're going about their business. It's they're like a machine. I've said this, probably 2 years ago. They're very, very impressive. All the cogs in together. Like Cathal Murray has been able to change a large volume of that team. Like he is Sarah Dervin started her first game. She's back, and I'd say, Sarah's probably thinking now of putting the feet up. This could be the last effort. He's had no Sarah Healy in goal. He's had no Sarah Dervin. Heather Cooney's retired. No Niamh Kilkenny. He's without a large number of crew that would have been, as I said, his mainstay of his team in the last few years. He's been able to flip the team, bring in new bodies, and they're still trucking on, and still, to me, at this stage, they're the team to beat. No question about it. Cork, they've been a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. Were absolutely fantastic in the opening rounds. They played Tip below in the Rag, and they were phenomenal that day, I thought, and were really putting down the mark. And I came away from that game, and I was on to Gerard Canan at it, and was saying these could be hard stop this year. But then something, they hit the buffers a little bit, and it's kind of been very indifferent from them with regards to then the Munster Championship, the way that went. They got defeated by Clare, of course. Now they put Clare to the Kasha in Cusack Park, but they've been hit and miss. Kilkenny haven't been anyway fantastic either. Got their victories against Dublin and got the draw against Tip, but the fact that they drew with Wexford, that's something I still, it was their first game. It still rankles with Brian Dowling that little bit. And I saw Dara Cahura in the preview before the match. He was talking about dirty petrol, and there's still a bit of dirty petrol there for Kilkenny. So the one that there's an opportunity. This could be very open, Shane, the way the next few weeks play out. Tip are definitely going to be involved in it. Waterford could be a dark horse. The only problem you would have with Waterford is the group that they were in, the quality of the group that they were in. They got fine wins. You don't know how good Antrim were the last day, and as Shane said, they might have had the feet up a little bit, knowing that they were already in the knockout stage. But they played Offaly and they played Limerick, and they gave them, big beatings as well. So hard to know. But this Waterford team could be the dark horse. I expect Tip to be in the mix. And like Shane said, any one of the six, I think it's probably down to 5, to be all honesty, to be true. And I'd keep an eye for Waterford, but quality-wise, yeah. It's been impressive so far, and probably one of the most open championships, I'd say, in the last few years.
And Shane, I mean, coming back to Antrim this weekend, it's not that many months ago that Drum were in an All-Ireland semi-final against Lochgiel. And, we were kind of, building up the chances a little bit. Sometimes a Tipperary team being a favourite isn't ideal, but like once bitten, twice shy. So all those Drum players will certainly know what to expect.
Oh, definitely so. But I do think, like, while I'm sure that will focus the minds of a lot of players, particularly the Drum contingent, that they'll know all about some of the key players in the Antrim side. But I just do think that Tip have, when it comes to inter-county, you need a panel, and that's where probably Tip are a bit ahead of Antrim in terms of strength and depth. Like I said, the only worry I would be is the fatigue factor from last weekend. As I said, that they looked absolutely spent. I was trying to interview Julianne Burke afterwards, and like she could see it on her face, the effort that was put in. Like, so, like, you just hope that, look, you get to knockout stages just for winning. If they get out of Croke Park with a win, look, they'll have 2 weeks to get ready for a semi-final back in Nolan Park. And they will feel, some of them, that there's more in them. I thought Tip's full forward line was pretty well shackled last weekend. Caught Devan, Grace O'Brien, I think only 1 point from play between the two of them. So Tip didn't really get an awful lot of quality ball into them. I'm sure maybe if there is a sign of fatigue, they will have a chance to freshen things up. Because they do have the bench, there's no doubt about it. Irina Friday didn't get a run last weekend. Emer Heffernan only came on at the very end. I'd agree with Shane. If it works out for Tipperary over the next few weeks, it's lined up perfectly. You get a run out in Croke Park, get back to Nolan Park where they played last weekend, and if they get through, they're back in Croke Park, and maybe a lot of the players who wouldn't have played in Croke Park are that bit of awness will be gone this weekend. I don't think honest is a word, but that bit of awe factor playing there for the first time. So look, they look like a very, very focused group this year. I think that they're hungry, and I think I would think that they should be too strong for Antrim this weekend. It could be a big upset if they don't win. They could probably, take the chance maybe of tweaking their team a bit, maybe freshen up certain lines. You probably have Monia Slattery will probably have to come in goals. Now it doesn't look like Coda Kirk will make, or Cueva Burke will make it. You probably expect Claude Quirk will be itching to get going again after being disappointing the last day. I thought the half-back line Saturday was excellent. Karen Blair, Karen Kenny, from McGrath, they were really dominant. Karen Kenny's just a Rolls Royce of a player. She just glides over the ground. Midfield, probably not as dominant. Probably Teresa Ryan's quietest game now of the championship. Not as in, but Casey Hennessy was good. Roisin Howard, she's just an absolute workhorse in that half-forward line. She was really good. Cueva Maher, probably a little quiet. Emer McGrath, a couple of nice touches. Decent on the frees. Probably missed a few that she would have thought she would have liked to have gotten for her from her own point of view. One probably before half-time that created a little controversy. I think we all thought the match was a draw at half-time, and then it was 1 point was chalked off. Seemingly the last free, I think, had gone wide, and there was a little bit of confusion over it. So thankfully, it didn't cost Tipperary in the long run. And as I said, the full forward line probably didn't get to show their best last weekend. So while last weekend was generally positive, there are areas for them to maybe find a bit more traction this weekend.
Killian, you commentated on that All-Ireland Club semi-final between Drum and Lougheed. And one player that stood out to me that day was Katrina Dobbin, and the pace of some of the forwards that the Antrim club have. Who would you be kind of concerned about if you were Tipperary this weekend?
Yeah, well, she's the one, definitely. Katrine Dobbin, Roisin McCormack, the McKillops, they're definitely names that stand out there that would have been with Lougheed that day, and they're two that definitely inside line that you're gonna have to be keeping an eye on. But defensively, they've lost one or two through various different reasons this year, Shane. So they weren't fantastic. They got the wins against Limerick and Offaly, but they weren't like the Waterford victories. So that's why I would think Tip won't be taking them for granted. And the Lougheed girls have played at Croke Park now as well. That awe factor as well has gone out the window, for them. And I don't think McCormack and Dobbin, they get bothered by the venue or anything like that. They're classy players, so there's no question. Antrim's rise has been meteoric, you'd have to say, since they won the intermediate championship, and they feel right at home at senior level. Shane, everything about Antrim camogie at the minute, it's all going well. It's I use the phrase probably an awful lot as well, but all ships are rising. That they've put in the effort. That the second team obviously won an All-Ireland as well last year, at the junior level. So they really have got their ducks in a row up there, and are determined to make an effort. So I think in a way they'll come to Croke Park at a shot to nothing. In a lot of people probably will say they don't expect them to beat Tip, but that could be a situation then where the Tip get caught up in that a little bit, worrying about things, and Antrim just go for broke and come away with the win. You just can't take the chance. I just think Tip, I agree with Shane, Dennis needs to get a bit more out of the full forward line, and there's great quality within it. But he wasn't afraid to make the changes. Considering the game, that was the same team, I believe, started all the games for Tip, and he wasn't afraid to make the changes that were necessary. And like Niamh Tracy, even though she apparently had been going so well in training that she had to get the option there that the last day when she came in for Emer Heffernan, I think Niamh was just a little bit unfortunate. Not sure she'll get the start in Croke Park. So maybe, as you said, Shane said there might be a chance to rejig, and maybe Claudia McIntyre, Croke Park could suit her pace, whatever, might be an opportunity there. I think Tip will have too much in the forward line for Antrim. And I also think Corinne Blair, Karen Kennedy, Aoife McGrath, a Rolls-Royce half-back line. There's no question about it. I think Corinne Blair has really matured into a fantastic senior player. Karen Kennedy is up there for me with challenging some of the greats in the camogie game, and Aoife McGrath holds her own. I think they'll smother that Antrim attack in lots of ways. So I expect Tip to win. I just hope they don't get, as you said, caught up in the worry about what's next now, where it comes, because we've seen that in recent times in quarterfinals, that it just hasn't fallen for Tipperary when maybe expected that they would, that they would hurl better than they did. So I fully expect them to get the win. They'll be back in Nolan Park then, whoever they have to take on, and I expect them probably to lay down a bit of a marker. But going back to your original question, you got to keep an eye out for Dobbin and McCormick and the McKillops. They'll definitely be four that you would be worrying about.
Yeah, that would be the thing for me. That would be the thing for me, is that they just don't get caught looking ahead. And like, there probably would have been an element of relief when the draw was made. Okay, when they're in a quarter final, that they got Antrim, because you can only imagine how demoralised they probably would have been if the draw had pitted them against Cork. You think you go to all that effort to top the group, and then you go play a Cork team that are probably, like, I would look at that result against Clare and it's like, God almighty, these Cork seem to have found something. And I think that they split their dual player resources last weekend. So they'll have, I think, Hannah Looney and Orla Cahalan went with the footballers. So they'll have them available this weekend for that quarter final against Kilkenny. And on the basis of that, I would say Cork are favourites. But the thing is that just when you begin to doubt Kilkenny, they'll turn this into a struggle. Like, I think a lot like last weekend, it was a low-scoring game, which I think suited Kilkenny, and I think Kilkenny will try and dog this out again. Plus, they'll have a big Kilkenny support in Croke Park, and I wouldn't rule that out being an element to their quarter-final. So, on form, I would say Cork would probably be favourites, but I tell you, it's that when you just think Kilkenny might be maybe struggling a little bit. I said that the site of Cork, actually, as you said, Killian, might just blow any bit of dirty petrol away this weekend.
Yeah, sure. Look, they have the card over Cork. That's it. Cork as well. They're coming in with a psychological scar. They just can't seem to get over this Kilkenny team. So you can't rule out that some of Kilkenny's greatest victories in recent times have come in Croke Park. They won a COVID final that no one expected them to win. They were came from the dead and dictated so many different things. Then in winning the All Ireland against Cork last year. So they. Over the last few years, people mightn't have given Kilkenny much credence going into the closing stages, but they somehow are just able to empty the tank. And there's going to be a bit of a change in the guard with Kilkenny, I'd say, coming up as well, Shane. There's a few trucking there now that are coming into the departure lounge, I would say. No disrespect, they've lost a few bodies. They've also a little bit of changing around there, that they've been introducing a couple of players. From a Kilkenny point of view, some of those players probably not at the level that some of the people that they've replaced, if I'm to be truthfully honest with it, but they're still, they're Kilkenny. You just can't rule them out. And that's, something Matthew Toomey and Cork will be looking over their shoulder, that, like, if you're going down the home straight, Shane, and they're still with you, there's going to be a certain amount of panic is going to enter into the back of your mind. So, if you're going to be Cork, you want to be putting Kilkenny out of sight, I'd say, into the closing stages. It would be a huge thing for Cork if they're able to pull that off, because I think psychologically, to beat Kilkenny in Croke Park and clear the way then a little bit then for an open draw of a semi-finals, which I don't necessarily agree with, but you're in the mix then with Galway or Tipperary or Galway or Waterford, who are obviously straight into those semi-finals, and you're in Nolan Park, and you're a game away again from Croke Park. It might be a perfect pickup for Cork, but still all to play for. That game, that could be a toss of a coin coming into the closing stages.
Yeah, one of the most positive things for Tipperary, like if you're to sort of get ahead of yourself and start thinking maybe Tipper back and can go and try and win a first title since '04, is like it's not Dennis Kelly's first year, so he already knows all the players, having been involved previously with Bill Mullaney. Like you said there earlier, 3 changes before half time and still perform. Like even about that score that was disallowed in the first half and still didn't bother them. Like all these obstacles being thrown up and still, they find a way to keep going, Shane. I think that's probably one of the biggest positives, that you think there's a bit of a resilience about this team.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely that's one thing about them. Like, and even like 10 minutes to go, when Kilkenny got the 3 points in quick succession to get back level. In that last 30 minutes, it might have been only 1 point apiece, but it was Tipperary who were pushing for the winner. Like, Kilkenny had very few chances after that. When I think the final whistle was called, I think the ball was in the Tipperary or the Kilkenny defensive end of the field. So, like, definitely the area from 2 years ago, I suppose, when Tip got to the semi-final. I know last year they slipped back. The area they were probably caught short in against the likes of Kilkenny and Galway was strength and condition and athleticism. I definitely think they've caught up massively in that area. They're able to survive the physical exchanges. They have that bit of vector mobility. It's just in these big games, and I suppose maybe we've seen over the last few years, like when you get to the semi-finals and finals, they're not actually hugely high scoring. They're very defensive affairs, our affairs, if Killian would know, like but they're generally tight. It's already 1, 2, 3 point games. So while Tip didn't lose last weekend, they weren't defeated. I think that was, I remember what Killian said about the final whistle, that Tip the sideline jigged in celebration. It felt like a win because they thought, we finished top of the group, we avoided defeat against Kilkenny. Okay, could have won it, but it was just another little box tick that we came to the home of the All-Ireland champions and survived.
Absolutely.
And if we can survive with them, we can survive with anyone.
And then just to finish up then, Killian, before we let you go, you've been great with your time. How will these games go this weekend? Just put your neck on the block for us there.
Well, look, I fully expect Tip to beat Antrim. No disrespect to Antrim. I think they're a common team, and maybe they're taken each step, and this has been a further step in their development. I just don't think it's their year to cause a surprise just yet. But I do think there'll be one to watch possibly next year. I think Tipperary, I agree with Shane. I just think the one thing that they've improved on is the strength and condition. I just think their ability to be able to ride some of the tackles, that there was definitely hard hits going in. It was phenomenal belting and hitting going on. And you might say the women's game is not physical. By God, there was some physical encounters between both 65s. And I was seriously impressed by some of the ability of the Tip players to be able to get out of that. So, unless fatigue, unless there's some kind of mental jar or something like that, or going to Croke Park or anything like that, I fully expect Tip to win. And I'd say minimum 6 points victory for them, because I think the forwards will be, there'll be better accuracy and everything like that, and I think that'll be something. Just the one thing you might be concerned about is the element of how much effort they put in to beat Kilkenny, to get the draw with Kilkenny, but into that Kilkenny game. But I expect Tip to be in the semi-finals with at least a 6 point victory. And as regards the Cork Kilkenny game, that one, I never like sitting on the fence, but that's going to me, where it's at with 10 minutes to go, Shane, will be a big factor. I think Kilkenny, love Croke Park. They have the hex on Cork, and I think that's something Cork are going to have to extricate a little bit now the next day. I think if Cork are to be serious, because again, they have a few players there that are entering, the final stages as well of careers and everything like that. And if they're to be serious about trying to get an All-Ireland win, they're going to have to push for one this year or next, in my opinion. So I'm going to give it to Cork. I just think that this might be the moment that they'll be able to shine, because I think we're probably looking at a Kilkenny team that might be just at their weakest point that they have been in the last few years. So to me, it's going to be the 2 Munster counties are going to be into the semi-final. 3 Munster counties of 4 then in the semi-finals along with Galway. That's something, I suppose, for Munster camogie to be joyous about. So I think it's going to be Tip and Cork in the semi-finals.
Killian, brilliant to have you on the show, and hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.
Thanks, lads. Good to see you.
Okay, so let's move on to the All-Ireland semi-finals this weekend. Galway against Limerick and Clare against Kilkenny. How do you see Galway against Kilkenny going, first of all? Sorry, Galway
Limerick. Yeah. Look, on the face of it, you think, okay, Limerick but from what we've seen so far, Limerick, I fancy Limerick confidently enough to win. But like I'm wary of Galway and the fact that, and something that Henry Shefflin knew that afterwards, that after the win over Tip, is that we haven't completely fired fully yet. And I just wait and just this is Galway, who we've seen over the years sometimes. Like, remember back in 2001 when they produced that semi-final performance against Kilkenny and the Kevin Broderick, they're all every now and then. And 2005 was that the 5-goal performance, Niall Healy. They sometimes produce a performance out. Well, you would say this team is probably not an over, but where everything just comes together on one day and they get the victory. And I think they have the potential to do it. Although the news last night that Jason Flynn is out, admittedly he wasn't going to start, but it robs them of definitely an option coming off the bench. Like, but I suppose the thing for me is down to Limerick. One, who's going to play at centre back? Will it be Dan Morrissey? Will it be Kyle Hayes? Will it be Garrod Hegarty, Keane Lynch? There's loads of names going around. How will they have dealt with that? And then I know they've gone through the 4-week break so far, but I sometimes think 4-week break after being in a rhythm of playing regular games, it can break your rhythm. Like, will Limerick be a little stale in the first 15, 20 minutes like they were in 2019? Can Galway get off to a good start and get themselves ahead? Like, so those little things for me, I still think for all maybe the players that could be missing, I still think Limerick probably have enough quality to win. But something tells me that if we get the Galway close to their best, I wouldn't be surprised if Galway won.
Yeah, like I heard different things about challenge matches that Limerick have played, like Causeway in Killarney, and where David Reedy was centre back in the first half, Garrod Hegarty was centre back in the second half, and I've heard that maybe Reedy will be playing midfield. You hear all sorts of different things, that maybe even Keane Lynch is struggling at the moment. Obviously, it hasn't been his year so far, but he's one of the best around, and probably the best around when he's fully fit. But like, there are question marks about Limerick because Sean Finn is obviously missing as well. And if you were to go with a holding centre back, which would be Dan Morrissey, he's more likely to just try and not necessarily drive forward like maybe Barry Nash or
it's the less.
Hayes. What way do they go?
It's the least change, was you're moving him to an area he's comfortable with. You're moving Mike Casey to back to full back where he's comfortable, and you're probably slotting in Richie English. So you're not making a massive shift, if you know what I mean. But you're replacing Hickey with Morrissey. You're not replacing like with like, really.
Yeah, no, it's true. But like, if they bring in Richie English at full back, he hasn't been starting the last couple of years, and they obviously feel that other players are higher up in the pecking order. So then not only are you taking Sean Finn out of the full back line, you're also taking Dan Morrissey. So surely that should open up opportunities for Galway. And I just wonder, will we get a day when all of these Galway forwards fire at the same time? Because it was Conor Whelan pretty much carrying the attack for long spells. Yeah. And, we can say that Kevin Cooney was very good, but he's not scoring heavily. He is really good, and he was very good late on in the Leinster final. Like, will Conor Whelan score 1-5? Will he need to score 1-5? Like, to be fair, they've found new players now with Keenan Fahy and Sean Linan, if you were to look at the Tipperary game. Not that they're new on the block, but these two lads had coming-of-age performances, you'd imagine. And they still have, like, that spine with the likes of Dahi Burke. Cathal Mannion's obviously very good hurler. But I don't think they'll play him as much of a sweeper as they did in the semi-final last year. Because remember, in the first 10 minutes, he was trying to sit in front of that pocket where Whelan likes to come out and collect the ball, wheel around and knock it over off his left-hand side. But Galway's deliveries were so good because they were able to work it up with that, with Galway down a man further up the field and then just bypass the sweeper. Yeah. So I don't think there's going to be too much protection for the full back line. It'll be sink or swim against Aaron Whelan and Seamus Flanagan and so on. I think that could make it a very exciting game.
Oh, definitely could. Like, I do agree. I think Galway can't just hang their hat on Conor Whelan to be the lead scorer. Like, Brian Concannon has been slightly off his best this year. Like, and Evan Nyland's really only chipping in with frees. Like, they need somebody to go with Whelan and maybe get 3-4 points of play. Like, you just wonder, could they and Cathal Whelan Cathal Mannion was always good for 3 or 4 points in play. But like if he's going to play in a deeper role, that's out of the question. Like, do you shove him into the middle of the fields where he could pick off 60, 70-yard scores? Do you maybe go back to Conor Cooney and say, God, maybe undoubted ability? Like, so be fascinating to see what way Henry Shefflin goes. Like, would he maybe take out maybe a Sean Lennon or a Keenan Fahy and get an extra scorer into the team? Like, so it'd be fascinating to see what he thinks.
Yeah, and like during the league game earlier this year, Kyle Hayes did an awful lot of damage, and they had Donal O'Shea, who's a very good, promising young player, but physically he's going to take another few years before he can compete with someone like Kyle Hayes. And he was playing right wing forward on him, and I would say that again it gave Shefflin a fair old indication that he needs to have someone who can match up with him. But of course, if Hayes ends up going centre back, which he could do, because like, does John Kiley really want to take 2 cogs out of that full back line this year? And generally, Hannon is so good at sitting in front. Is it going to be like, is someone going to be as good at sweeping in front as Declan Hannon has been? So he's gambling on a couple of things if he's going to change his full back line even more.
Plus, like, you have Colin Coughlin, who's probably thinking this could be his coming of age game. Like, he's very, very close. And he does a lot of, look, he's not a Kyle Hayes, but he does an awful lot of the similar things that Kyle Hayes does.
Yeah.
He's comfortable on the ball. He's able to get up the wing.
Yeah. We've Liam Hogan joining us now. Liam, we're just talking about the merits of Limerick against Galway this weekend. And put your neck on the block for us. What way is it going to go?
Good morning, gentlemen. First of all, I have a quite fancy for Galway, believe it or not. If you look at that Galway team, they have players that any county you would wish to have, from Jerry McInerney, Daithí Burke, Kieran Whelan, Cian Fahy, Evan Nyland, and to see the 4 or 5 subs they brought on in the game against Tipperary, in a game I think they could have won by a lot more had they taken their goal chances. And Galway always have one good performance in them every year. The trouble for Galway is that they tend to not be able to repeat it the following day. And I think this is the day this Galway team will come in Croke Park. I remember last year against Limerick, they had Limerick by the neck and just they didn't get over the line. So I have a nice fancy for Galway.
And then the other semi-final, Shane, Clare against Kilkenny. Will Clare be able to find the answers if John Conlon can't play? I mean, he seemed like he was in a bad way after that collision with Danny Sutcliffe, and who knows if he'll be right just 2 weeks later. I'm not even sure if it's concussion protocols. Obviously, information is hard to get off these counties. But if they're down him, surely Conor Cleary, even if he does tug out, he can't be right. And then David McInerney and Aidan McCarthy missed the quarterfinal as well. So they'll probably need 3 out of 4 of them right, or else they need to rejig things and learn the lessons from last year.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the fence with this one. Like, I can make a case for both teams. Like okay, you say Kilkenny beat Clare heavily last year, but then I remember back to that game and Clare hit about 22 or 23 wide, so they had an awful lot of shots. Like, it's just that they were just way off target. I know that a lot was made of John Conlon not being there, but like, Clare still had an awful lot of chances at the other end of the field. Like, so, but then the Achilles heel of the Clare team last year and this year remains their defence. Like, and even against Dublin, while they scored 5-26-27, they still look very, very open back there. Paul Crummy got onto an awful lot of ball, and you think if Martin Keoghan or Owen Cody gets that type of ball, or TJ Reid, that they won't maybe take more of those chances. So look, Jesus, it's a hard one to know. I'm sort of going towards Clare because I think I'm sometimes I believe in fate, and maybe we're going to get the third element of the Limerick Clare trilogy from the final. But I think there's an awful lot more pressure on Clare this weekend than in Kilkenny. I just I think they've really got to. They have a lot of ghosts exercise from last year in this semi-final. Look, if Conlon's able to go, I think he'll be able to go. I think if they have to get guys out there at this stage. I suppose you get to semi-finals, guys have probably got to play through the pain barrier a small bit. So, I think if maybe Conor Cleary would be too much of a risk because he hasn't played for so long. But then what do you do? Like Kilkenny play TJ Reid and Owen Cody inside. They're two big physical guys. Like they Rory Hayes and Paul Flanagan and co would really struggle with them in the physical exchanges. Like so, I'm leaning towards Clare, but not confidently.
Yeah, Liam, what do you think?
I'm going to lean towards Kilkenny. Croke Park is second. It's home from home for Kilkenny, and watching Kilkenny in the Leinster final against Galway, there was a little bit of the old type Kilkenny when their defence came thundering out to the ball and getting the ball up quick to the attack. Clare beat a very poor Dublin team in Limerick there in the quarter final. A Dublin team that's missing a lot of their first name players through one reason or another. And you must remember Tony Kelly scored 3-3. Dave Fitzgerald had a great game as well, but at times the Dublin defence parted like the Red Sea. And no option but for Clare to score those goals. I thought Dublin were very, very poor. I'm going to go for Kilkenny because they had that factor in Croke Park.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Kilkenny myself. When we see the starting teams, you might change your opinion a small bit, but like the full back line that started the last day for Clare, Adam Hogan, Rory Hayes and Shane Amori. I mean, like you said, Shane, if Kilkenny load up TJ Reid, Owen Cody and maybe even Wally Walsh in that full forward line, I'd be very interested to see can Adrian Mullen make a comeback, because if he can, he's arguably now their most important player. Mikey Butler and Mossy Keoghan injuries, they're obviously a bit of a blow, but I don't know. I just like if your centre back and your full back are not available and you have to rejig and you've question marks when you start the game. Like we even saw it, like we've seen it in the two big games that Clare have had in recent times. The Munster final this year, the All-Ireland semi-final last year, and Brian Lohan got wrong and he, stayed wrong in the Munster final and just persevered with it. I wonder if Aidan McCarthy is right. Could he just be slotted into the half back line somewhere? Maybe David McInerney into the full back line. You'd be hoping that Conlon is right as well, but I think maybe
I think he needs to. Lohan comes across to me, I suppose everyone is a stubborn character, but I think it's his way. I know there's a lot of frustration in Clare at how Peter Duggan is still in the team when you have Aaron Shanahan there. Like, do you just go with? Do you start with Shanahan in the full forward line, and do you pick the guys that are in form rather than guys that are suited to a certain position? If you know what I mean. I think particularly in the fight, you mentioned Aidan McCarthy. He sort of hasn't been at his best this year, but then maybe a new role, maybe a new part of the field might get him into life as well. So it'd be fascinating to see what way they go.
Yeah, he's got pace. He's got everything that a modern halfback should have. And it's obviously great having him further up the field, but that's probably not where Clare's issues are. We'll move on to the Tipperary Club Hurling Championships coming up this weekend. And
good stuff. The big stuff.
The real stuff. And we'll focus, obviously, on the North Championship. And I want to focus, if you don't mind, on Borrisley against Killarwan, first of all. Liam, we'll start off with you. How have these two teams been going?
Well, if you listen to the rumours that's going around, it's a question of what players you have coming into the dressing rooms. So many players both have departed and gone to America and gone to Australia. From what I hear, Borrisley are in better fettle than Killarwan in that department. And if this is the situation, would be tipping Borrisley to get over the line. Killarwan have too many important players missing.
It's interesting, I suppose, but Borrisley probably have to rejig things a little too. James McCormick is gone, so they need a new goalie this year. Ray McCormick is in England, so he's a loss from their half back line. But I just get the sense from talking to Jerry Kelly at the launch on Sunday that Borrisley will be going back to basics. It was probably clear that the Shane O'Neill experiment last year just didn't work. That he was trying to change probably a style of hurling that. Look, we all know from the Munster, the county winning campaign and Munster winning campaigns of 2019, it was a very traditional, very how would you say, it wasn't a very basic brand of hurling Borsley played, but it suits them down to the ground. So I think you're going back to Philip Maher as manager, who was the selector under those teams under Johnny Kelly, that I think Borsley will go back to basics. They won't overcomplicate things a small bit. And I do think they'll probably get over the line here against Killerwan. Killerwan, missing Paddy Williams at the moment. I think he will be back for some of the campaign. I just noticed Keano Kelly's name on one of those 60-day transfers off to America. So, like, he's a big loss. I've been hearing great things about him and some of that challenge game against Dublin that Tip played a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's a big loss. Who else? There's somebody else I'm thinking of. But then Craig Morgan is back. He missed most of last year's campaign. So I would assume maybe the extra 2 weeks after the hamstring injury against Offaly, he should be right. I suppose the thing for me would be with Killerwan is, when you, like last year, when you think you write them off and say they can't win, they come out and win, and they have virtually the same management team as last year. But Liam McKelly has moved on, but all the selectors are there. Thomas Williams coming in as a new coach. I think it'll be tight, but maybe the greater spread of scorers might just edge it Borsley's way.
Yeah, and like Borsley have changed coach midway through the year. Martin Fogarty was there, and they've changed things since then. We'll move on to the next game then. Roscrea against Killadangan. Liam, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on these two teams?
Well, Killadangan are entering this game where they have all of their players back training, which would probably be a blessing for the team. They haven't been involved with Kilkenny County stuff. A Roscrea team who have been promoted from the Premier Intermediate, having a great win in last year's championship. I'd have to go for Killadangan in this because I think they have the better quality and all-round team. But they have a task ahead of them. They're very disappointed after losing last year's county final. I feel they didn't play up to the standard they can play. Now is the year to prove that they were worthy champions 2 years ago. So I go for Killadangan in this game.
Yeah, Shane, is it a good or a bad thing that most of the Killadangan lads were left off the Tipperary panel this year, in the sense that will that have, be dispiriting to them, or will they have had a chance to bounce back and be like, right, we'll put all our eggs into the county championship basket now? I
think from the club's point of view, in terms of preparing for championship, it was ideal. Like, they had everybody there, bar Liam's son Barry. They had, and I think James Quigley was in with Tip at the start of the year, but I think he was let go after the league. So they practically had their entire outfield all their outfield players available. So and they won the county league impressively. So they've been gelling well. I think Killadangan are sore. I think losing a North final and a county final last year I think it'll stoke up a bit of fire in them. There's something I think I said a lot last year with Killadangan. The spark really wasn't in them last year, even though they got to two finals. That element of energy and maybe creativity wasn't there. So I think it'll be back. I think they'll use a little bit of anger too, in the fact that for a club that only have one county representative on the Tip panel this year, I think it rankles with some of them. Like, I thought maybe the likes of Alan Flynn were probably jettisoned a little bit hastily. I still think Willie Connors in an inter-county setup, if he gets back right, offers an awful lot. He just offers something different. So I'm expecting a big year out of Killadangan. I just think that they have elements to use psychologically to get them going. And look, I think Roscrea, it could be a tough re-entry to senior hurling for Roscrea this weekend. I just think Killadangan have an awful lot to prove. I think it's interesting read for Killadangan, and it's something they tried during the league, and whether they continue it in the league is Joe Gallagher going back to centre back. What way will that change things up in terms of that? I think they were looking at Alan Flynn at midfield team, if I'm not mistaken. So what are they aiming to do there with moving Joe to half back line? Because in fairness to Joe, there were times in big matches there when a big catch needed to be won, Joe was always the man that won it off a long puck out, famously for the goal in the 2020 county final. So have they enough leaders in that forward line to win the hard ball if it's needed in a tight game? And look, there's a couple of players there, like I would think I would think looking at a Sean Hayes, like he's one that if he has a big club campaign, that he'd be one that John or Mike or Liam Cahill would be thinking. There's no doubt Sean Hayes has all the ability. It's just that can he put it in consistently, game in, game out in this club championship, and I think he won't be far away from a call up for a county squad next year.
Liam, can you tell us about Ross Gray so far this year? I mean, Eddie Brennan's obviously gone to Moycarkey Borough, so he's not involved. But have they kept their momentum from last year going?
They were just about average in the county league. If the county league is going to be used as a barometer, they don't. To me, they don't seem to have enough of class up front to turn for the top tier in senior hurling. As much as we'd like to see Ross Gray do well, because everyone recalls the great days Ross Gray had back in the 70s and 80s, but those days are gone. And again, I go back to Killangan. If Killangan have the hunger, and they should have the hunger, and the new players up front like Owen Sharkey and maybe Shamie Deason if he gets to go, and Billy Seymour in the league final seem to be coming back somewhat to what we expect of him. That should be enough to do for Killangan to get over the line. I'm not expecting anything fantastic from Ross Gray. I know there are many good players in defence and all that, and it depends who if Darren O'Connor can play. He has retired from senior hurling, but he came back with a fantastic performance in the league final against Nina, and his introduction was basically the win of the game for them. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah, and then Shane, do you want to have another comment on this or move on to?
No, I would. I'd fancy Killangan. I think Ross Gray. They'll carry that momentum from last year's Premier 2 to win. I think I'd be surprised if Ross Gray are relegated come the end of the year. But like I'd be interested to see how they gel back in. So it's like for their point of view, look, I'd say that they'll be going out to win. There's no doubt about it. But like if they come out of this game with a good performance to take into the county championship, I think they'll be pleased with that. Because like when you're coming up, you need to gel in. You need to show something straight away. Because in terms of performance, to say, look, we belong here, and I think we will see it. I think Killangan probably just have too many scoring weapons for them to try and tie down.
So Toom against Nina, then I noticed that in the image, the promotional image shared, Barry Heffernan was in the picture. Will he be ready to go? Like he's been back playing, hasn't he? He obviously just wasn't ready for inter-county just yet, Shane.
Yeah, no, he's ready to go. No, he's played 4 or 5 challenge matches already. So no, he's ready to go and really hungry for the fray. Like he was just speaking to him last Sunday. Like really, as he said himself, you never really appreciate what you have and when it's taken away. And like he hasn't been able to hurl effectively for the guts of 12 months. I think it's 51 weeks ago when Nina won that North final and he limped out of the game with the cruciate. So like he's back into a Nina team that is definitely in a bit of transition now. Like there's an awful lot of youth coming into that team. Like Sam O'Farrell, last year's minor winning captain. Like you have Ben West, you have Keane Crowley going well with the junior team. Like they're definitely seasoned, or sorry, not seasoned, but there's definitely a bit of a turnover, more of a fresh look to them. And I'm fascinated to see. I haven't seen Nina in any of their league games this year, but I'm fascinated to see the Michael Cleary handprint on him. Like he's doing all the coaching this year, back in after. I know they were trying to get him in for a good few years, and like he's finally he finally couldn't say no this time. I'm just fascinated to see the style of hurling they play. I'd say it'll be from what Barry Heffernan was saying, it'll be very intense, hard working, but very good ball playing skills. Like it'll be real old style Nina hurling. Like so. Fascinating to see that. And then you have Toomey Vara managed by Ken Dunn. Like you couldn't get two of the best people practically guiding these teams, Michael Cleary on one side and Ken Dunn managing kill Toomey Vara on the other side. And you can be sure like both teams will be so well prepared. And look, when you talk a North Championship hurling, I think Toomey Nina comes to mind for most people straight away. Definitely my generation anyway. That was always the marquee game. And we haven't played each other an awful lot recently. So hopefully it's like started a game that, while it's the last match of the quarterfinals this weekend on Sunday evening, it might be the one that maybe really sparks the championship into life.
Yeah, and Liam, because it's two new managers with Toom and Nina, both will be looking to probably have a fair old shot at the North.
So looking at Tumivara in the league final against Killanang, and I thought their attack depended a lot on what Mark McCarthy could bring to the team, and I know Mark has been hampered by injuries from time to time. He's really developed into a real leader for Tumivara, but they need more than Mark McCarthy on that front line. I had a few words with Barry Heffernan last Sunday evening, and he looked like a man just raring to go. His body language, even talking, his body language walking up the street, told me that this man wants action and wants it quick. And Nina, for a while there during the league period, talking to some of the supporters, they were bemoaning the fact that there were so many players missing and gone away, and they didn't know whether they would have a team against Tumivara in the second last round of the league or not. And they came out and bet Tumivara very well, actually, with a young team. So, looking at there as the junior team, the likes of Ben West, he really impressed me in that final. Tori Shanawaka, he really impressed me in that final as well. And you have Keane Crowley coming into the side, although he didn't have the best of days that day, but he has great work rate, and he's an asset to the team.
Okay, and
I suppose the thing for me is with Toom is like they have been badly hit with maybe guys gone away. I think Jason Ryan is away this year. I think one or two more maybe in defence have slipped away. But then you have Darren McCarthy coming of age, maybe off last year's minor team. So a tight one to call. I'm sort of edging towards Nina, small, but just with just the forward line. Like if Jake Morris gets a decent supply of ball, you think they didn't have him in the league. Like he just with his, you would think Jake has the ability in club hurling. If he gets a good supply of ball, there's very few defenders will be able to mark him 1-on-1.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Premier Intermediate fixtures this weekend, I'll just run through them and you can sort of take a pop at whichever ones you like. Ballina against Newport and Burgess against Silvermines. Shane, we'll start off with you.
I let Liam comment on these.
Thanks, Shane. If you had the Burgess for two, first of all, the local derby.
In case I get any of our prospective semi-final opponents anything, I'm staying out of this.
Yeah, okay. If they're not bored, try to handpick two derbies. They couldn't have picked two better derbies. Burgess with their neighbours and Silvermines, and Newport against their neighbours Ballina. But looking at the Burgess Silvermines game first, it could be a shootout between the two best free takers in Tipperary, Stephen Murray and Jason Ford. And I met Stephen last Sunday at the launch, and the first thing that came into my mind was that fantastic display against Cashel. He scored 228. It was an incredible day for the man, and he has so many times pulled Burgess out of the fire. And Burgess got to the semi-final of the Premier Intermediate Championship last year, and at times they can be slow starters. As the year goes on, they really begin to get into their stride. I fancy Burgess to win this game, because watching Silvermines play last year, I thought they were very disappointing, but maybe now they have Brian Lawler at the helm, maybe he can bring something out from the team that they would need. They need him to bring up, because I thought they were very disappointing last year, and I'm going to opt for Burgess. But it would be probably a shootout between Jason and Stephen. The Newport Ballina game, from what I hear, Newport are missing quite a few players. But I have heard in the grapevine that Sean O'Brien is back and Conor Mahoney is back. So, and they've had a great start to their year, winning 2 league titles, winning the Division 3 there last week against Ballingarry, and the Division 5 win was a I think it was a surprise to them, but they played very well in the night. And Ballina, I went down to watch Ballina play their football game against J.K. Brackington. I know it's 2 different codes, but I was very impressed with the fitness of the Ballina players, and even watching Ballina play Shannon Rovers in the Junior B football final. and again, I stress it's two different codes, but I think their fitness levels were very good. And I was in Ballina pitch there last Tuesday night week there, and the club is really going very well. Juveniles training, there's 6 different pods of players on the field. Such is the numbers that they have, and as is evidenced by the news that came out there during the week from the census, they're probably the biggest population in Tipperary area at the moment in terms of hurling. I'm going
population jump over the last 20 years, like
absolutely,
it's exploded there.
So I'm going to opt for Ballina over Newport, and I'm going to opt for Burgess over the Mines, and to be and setting up a nice semi-final with Portrue and Laura waiting in the wings.
We won't put Shane on the spot, Liam. Who do you think is going to win the Premier Intermediate North?
Who's going to win the Premier? I was very fancy for Ballina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shane keeping stone faced there. He's not going to react to it. Who's going to win the Senior North? Do you reckon? And I think we all understand. We don't know too much about the teams now until they really take to the field. But Shane,
I did put my neck on the block. I think Killadangan will be. I think Killadangan will be hard beaten. Okay, they have to go through the long road, but I think if they get the spark back and add a bit of hunger back, and I think they'll be hard beaten. We didn't talk about Templederry. Like Templederry are the idle team in the championship this weekend. They're waiting in the semi-finals, so I suppose they're one team we can look at next week. And look, all the 4 divisions have games this weekend. Like some of the games in the mid are mouthwatering. Like you have Holy Cross and Mike Carkey, 2 clubs that are probably with underage talent, probably the next 2 and 9 maybe to break into the top 8, and Drummond Lockmore on Sunday. That doesn't need any more, and Stars and Brackens on Sunday evening, and then you go to the south and the west. Like just ideally, we'd love to be at Crow Park this weekend, but it's not a bad way to fall back on to have club hurling back.
Yeah, absolutely. Liam, who's your call for the North?
I'm going to support Shane on this one. I'm going to go for Killadangan. You might say I'm being biased, but to me, the team that everybody has to beat.
Yeah, you're wearing a Rovers jersey under your top there.
Actually, this is it is red and white, but would you believe it? This is an All-Star jersey from the year 2000. I'm not going to take off my jumper to show you, but that is from the year 2000. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, brilliant stuff, lads. Everyone out there, the Nina Guardian is in the shops now. So thanks very much, lads, and we'll chat to you all again soon.
See you, lads.